Hello, my name's Wyatt Trauber, and I'm your host for today's Virtual Research Landscapes event. To get us started, here's some remarks from Utah State University's Vice President for Research, Lisa Burrow.
It was, in fact, exactly 5 months ago when we were planning for our first Research Landscapes event of 2020, which was to be held in person. At that point, we were notified that all such in-person events were canceled. And in fact, it was within a week that all of higher education in Utah, as well as K through 12, went fully online. We all know that much has changed since that time. However, the importance of Utah's natural resources, specifically its land, air, and water, remains. And we feel that it's vitally important that we continue to share the discoveries and insights of our researchers in those areas. Today I'm excited to share with you National Parks, Forgotten Resources, and Growing Wisely.
After the YouTube portion of this event, join us in a live Q&A. We'll put the Zoom link in the box below. In this YouTube broadcast, you'll see a conversation I had a few days ago with 3 Utah State University researchers. Dr. Jessica Schad studies the relationship between people and natural amenities. Dr. Zach Miller studies visitor use and behavior in national parks. And Dr. Jordan Smith is the director of USU's Institute for Outdoor Recreation and Tourism. We've taken the best parts from that Zoom conversation we had a few days ago, and we split it into 3 sections. By the end of this presentation, you'll understand how these researchers use the data they collect to understand what's happening in our natural spaces, what they're doing to help gateway communities, and how all this work helps protect the outdoor experiences people are having across our growing state. Here's section 1, understanding what's happening. Utah's growing a lot. People like me who don't know much about this are really scared about using up all this natural land. What tools do we have to manage this use wisely?
Well, I think first is really understanding where that use is occurring. And so one of the things that both Zach and my research really focuses on, it's kind of the core of what we do as part of the Recreation Resource Management Program here at Utah State, is monitoring visitor use in parks and protected areas. And so that's kind of like step 1, is trying to understand, where are people going? And then step 2, as Zach alluded to, is what are the experiences that they're seeking out when they're going to those locations? And so we have a lot of tools to kind of quantify where people are going across the landscape. As Zach mentioned in his study in Arches, they're using camera traps. So
yeah, that's what I have a video of, and let's play that so that people can see the research, and it'll really take people into it.
If you were to go to most national parks and ask them how many visitors are hiking on trails, most parks wouldn't be able to tell you a clear answer. So we're helping provide technical assistance, and Arches National Park, where we're here today, is one of the busiest in the entire national park system. We're here helping managers understand visitor use to this windows area of the park. What we do is we use infrared trail counters to count the number of people, and we calibrate those counters with some trail cameras to make sure that we're being accurate with that. The infrared counters, for instance, if people are walking shoulder to shoulder in a group, won't be able to catch all of those people. We calibrate the times from the trail counters with the times from the cameras that we have, and we use those 2 things together to produce a data set that allows us to accurately assess the number of people in that area. Managers often try to provide a variety of recreational opportunities in a place, places that have opportunities for solitude, places that have opportunity for family togetherness, places that have opportunity for great photographs as well.
Before working for the Office of Research, I didn't really understand what research was or what that meant. I know that this is one example of what research is. Jessica, can you explain what your research is like? Because I know it's different.
Yeah, I like to use a variety of different methods when I do my research. So a lot of times I'll use secondary data, gather data from the Census Bureau, the American Community Survey, to sort of look at population trends in a place and how demographics are changing. So I do a lot of survey research in rural communities. I also do a lot of interviews with different types of residents in a place. So sit down with them in a local coffee shop, talk with them about what their daily life is like, but also observe them. So spend some time living in a place, trying to understand what it's like to be a person living in that particular community. So get that experience. And the beauty of using all these different methods, even though it takes more time, is that they really provide you with different lenses on what's going on in that particular place. So with the qualitative data, the interviews, you can really understand how people develop maybe their sense of place in a particular location, or how their identity has developed over time with regards to living in that community. And then with quantitative data, so doing surveys of a population, you can get a better sense of, say, a magnitude of an attitude, or the percentage of people in a particular place that might think that one certain type of development is a positive or a negative for a community.
Jordan, what does your research look like?
Well, I think it's a nice contrast to a lot of the work that Jessica does. So most of my research now is focused on trying to quantify much more of the where and when of where outdoor recreation occurs across large geographic scales. So one of the tools that we're using, social media, and the geographic locations of where people are when they're taking those photos and sharing those photos with their friends and family. So we have a lot of tools now to answer those questions about where and when somebody was when they participated in outdoor recreation or they were outside. And a lot of those methods that Jessica was talking about are much more tailored towards answering the why and the how of what they did. So when we're trying to understand how visitors participate in outdoor recreation, how they use Utah's outdoors, it's much more likely that we're going to go to those big data sets that have the ability to quantify that at a very large scale. And then we want to know like what they're responding to, why specific places mean specific things to specific user groups. Then we'll lean into some of those more qualitative research methods that Jessica talked about.
So now that we understand how quantitative and qualitative data is used to show us what's happening, I'm going to do my best to take you to a town that Dr. Schad studied. After that, you're going to learn what Jordan Smith is doing to help Utah's gateway communities. All right, here's section 2.
I tend to focus on is management of people within these geographically defined federal lands, more or less, where I think both Jordan and you tend to work outside of those boundaries. But really, so many of these issues are these transboundary challenges. And, you know, when you have 5 million people visit a place like Zion every year, they don't just evaporate when they leave the border. They go into those local communities. In parks, I study a lot of natural sounds and night skies. There is a study that I did, I think last year, looking at how the size of a protected area relates to the amount of human-caused sound in that area. And the relationship we were expecting was the larger the protected landscape, the quieter that it would be there. But it was actually the inverse relationship, where those protected areas were actually a little louder than smaller areas a lot of times. And we attributed some of that to amenity migration, because a lot of people want to be around these large landscapes. And, you know, that takes airports and train systems and transportation and building and all sorts of stuff like that. And so the sound from those communities actually penetrates pretty far and deep into these larger landscapes. And so that's just one example of how we like to draw these imaginary lines, but really these are very fluid issues moving beyond these boundaries that we often set.
Go ahead and play Jessica's video. Protect the people she talked to. She couldn't tell me where this town is. And also I couldn't just travel to Colorado in a 4-day period anyway. So I did my best in my kitchen, and that's what you're gonna see.
There's this town somewhere in Colorado. I'm just gonna call this place Rivertown. Instead of it being a winter destination like Aspen, it's a summer one. ATVing, hiking, activities on the river. There are 2 sparring schools of thought in Rivertown, the changers and the keepers. Many keepers have family roots planted when mining and extractive industry defined the community. Keepers want to preserve their way of life. Affordable homes where children and grandchildren can be raised on a quiet street in the country. Changers arrived as Rivertown transitioned to a recreation-based economy. This changer development is built on the concept of new urbanism. The small footprint of these homes reduces sprawl into the natural spaces that changers want to experience. And being tightly packed is supposed to build community. But what about the community of locals who can't afford to participate in new urbanism? Growth brings opportunity and the threat of being uprooted.
I loved that. That was so good. Good job, both.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, your creativity was great there.
Okay, Jessica, if you want to talk about the things that didn't make it into that quick video.
Well, there are those two groups of people. The perception that there are those two groups of people is almost even stronger than the differences between those people. So a lot of the people who have lived there for a long time and a lot of the people who have moved there more recently, they appreciate Rivertown for what it is. They like the size of it, they like the rural character, they like the natural amenities. But what sort of happened there and has happened in a lot of these amenity destinations is that people sort of get put into a group and then sort of pitted against each other. And then it often becomes hard to get various projects done. There's the two groups, but the perception of them has important implications in and of itself.
I guess my question for Jordan is, how can your institute help communities going through these kinds of changes like Rivertown?
I think what we've seen through a lot of the work like Jessica's is that what these communities are really struggling with is how to define their vision for the future, because there's multiple competing interest groups within those communities on what that vision should look like. But I think a lot of these community members, probably by and large, know that their communities are going to change. It's just working to collaboratively define what they want it to change into. Partnering between the College of Natural Resources, the Department of Landscape Architecture, and also the College of Law down at the University of Utah. And so that's the NARA initiative. It's Gateway Natural Amenity Region Initiative. And what it really is meant to be is a peer-to-peer learning network where we can put together the leadership in, say, Grand County, leadership in Moab, and allow them to connect with other gateway communities around Utah and around the Intermountain West to discuss the ways that they are responding to emerging challenges like the coronavirus pandemic, the policies that they've put in place and the ways that those have worked or they haven't worked, some of the legal restrictions or guidance they've had to put in place those policies. So that's the biggest initiative that we have going on right now is this Gateway Natural Amenity Region Initiative.
On to our final section. In this section, you'll learn about the goals that park managers have and how USU research helps them meet those goals to protect the outdoor experiences that people have across our growing state. Parks have different goals when they're managing things, and Arch is to me like an amusement park or a Disneyland version of a park, because you just get out of your car and you're right there in the awesome stuff. And then Canyonlands, which is right next door, seem to be a lot more serene and peaceful and more about taking in a huge landscape, and you don't get to interact with it in the same way. What kind of goals are they managing for?
So I think my first response is, like, as a scientist, my job is to help managers reach their goals, not help them like define whatever they're, that's up to them. They have their own agency mandates and all that kind of stuff. And it depends agency to agency. So the BLM, for instance, allows a OHV use and the National Park Service doesn't. And so, if they want to manage for motorized use, I'm going to help them manage for motorized use. And if they want to manage for wilderness experiences, I'm going to help them manage for wilderness experiences. So I think it depends a little bit, but certainly Arches is a very small and constrained system. It's actually a very small national park with more or less a single road system going through it. But even in our large national parks, a place like Yellowstone, for instance, I've heard, and I don't ask me where the citation is because I don't know where it is, but something like 50 to 60% of people that visit Yellowstone don't ever really leave the road corridor. And so the idea that you just step out of your car and the good stuff is there, like you just said, that's kind of the idea of national parks. It's a very accessible form of wildness to a lot of people. It's sometimes referred to as like the rustic park architecture. A lot of our parks were engineered for that exact experience. That being said, so many people, if they were to just leave the road corridor, could have a variety of different other experiences. And so it's less about managing for a homogeneous landscape and more about managing for a spectrum of different opportunities, from those really step out of your car and there's an arch, to a place where you might be able to hike into and be the only ones there and see similar scenic beauty. So I think it's about that range of opportunities. And that would probably be a recommendation I would give a manager, is don't think about homogeneity, think about, diversity on the landscape.
Yeah. Jordan?
Yeah, well, just to kind of jump off of Zach's points, I think part of the mission for those agencies that manage those public lands is providing outdoor recreation opportunities and providing the benefits that come from outdoor recreation opportunities. And what we're basically doing in providing those opportunities is realizing that there's something special and unique that can only be provided and through those experiences. And we have all these policies, and management regulations, and guidance to protect those experiences. And we do that for physical landscapes in the way that we protect formally designated wilderness. We're starting to think about the ways that we can do that for other resources like night skies, like natural soundscapes. Those are all public goods that we should freely be able to, have at our disposal and be able to enjoy.
Zach, why are sounds and dark skies important resources to protect?
I think this is maybe fact check this one, but I want to say something like 80% of the people in the United States cannot see the Milky Way where they live anymore. And so when we go to places that have this dark sky protected, it's an opportunity to experience things that were for a really long time part of our past. And they provide this emotional experience of feeling small and feeling time slowing down. I was hiking in Glen Canyon National Recreation Area with their wilderness ranger, and we had our buffs up over our faces, and the wind was blowing and we couldn't hear each other, and we were the only ones out there, and it was hot out. And he turns to me and says, "Doesn't this feel awesome? Like we just got cast out of society and it's just you and I now, the wind's blowing in our faces." And I was like, yes, that's the exact experience. And those quiet landscapes really add to some of those opportunities and experiences that not everyone gets to experience in their everyday life.
Jordan, now's probably a good time to play your video. Also, this is his video from last year because it does fit in really well.
I think I have a lot shorter hair now.
40 to 45% of the entire population of the state lives in 4 counties. They live primarily right there on the Wasatch Front. And we wanted to look at the impact that user fees might actually have on visitation. We looked at Cottonwood Canyons that are primarily free, and Mill Creek Canyon, which requires a day use fee, about $3 a day. We found low-income outdoor recreationists, those individuals who earn less than $25,000 a year, are traveling significantly farther, despite the fact that a closer, similar opportunity might be right nearby.
For Jessica, is that something that you have insight on?
Like the community that I studied in Colorado, the ability of people just to be able to walk out of their front door and not have to get into a car to be able to recreate was really important for a certain segment of the population. And it seems to sort of align with what Jordan was talking about in that video, with some of the newcomers who are more into hiking type recreation activities to prefer that sort of recreational opportunity. And so I do see some sort of differences as Jordan was talking about in terms of what kind of recreation they want to do, but also how far are they willing to travel for it? How much are they willing to pay to do those sort of things? And I think there are important differences that show up in research and need to continue to be examined.
So a few years back, the National Park Service proposed doubling the fees to get into a lot of our national parks. And this prompted myself and some colleagues from the University of Montana to look at how it might impact people's visitation behaviors to national parks. And we found that generally speaking, park fees don't have a very good relationship with people's intention to visit parks. So people are willing to pay a lot of money, a lot more than the current entrance fees. But what we did find was that those who were affected were the local community members, because the fee for that entrance is so much higher as a proportion of their trip compared to someone coming from Australia or even California to a place like Yellowstone. That $35, $75, who cares? It's a drop in the bucket compared to how much you spent on gas and your airfare and your hotel compared to someone who's going out for the day. The other thing that I think about right now that's happening related to COVID that's kind of in the same thread is that parks right now are starting to implement, for the first time, restrictions to the number of people who can go into the parks. There's a reservation system in places like Rocky Mountain National Park, for instance, and Yosemite National Park. Those restrictions are going to disproportionately impact people who live locally in that area, because every time they want to go to the park that might be 5 minutes down the road, they're going to have to make a reservation, and they might not be able to get one during the summer. And so what do we do about something like that? This is kind of a natural experiment going on, and I'm hoping it's not me right now, but I'm hoping someone out there is studying some of these issues related to what we call in recreation displacement. So where are people going now that they can't recreate in a place like Rocky Mountain National Park? If you think about Arches, if they were to implement something like that in Arches, there's so much land around Arches where people could go recreate, like Bureau of Land Management land there. But the BLM, the Bureau of Land Management, does not have the same resources and capacity to manage that high volume of visitor use. And so it's going to strain other agencies as that use gets displaced out of some of these parks. And right now, I don't think anyone has a handle on it.
Thanks for watching the YouTube component of the Research Landscapes virtual event. If you want to hear more about Rivertown, night skies, or information from social media, you can check out the Instead podcast. Each of today's presenters has an episode. But you gotta wait a minute to do that, because you need to get over to the Zoom Q&A. There's a link below, and we'll see you there.